joining.
Very unclear.
Okay, I'm thinking, so for intros, Oren, can you go first, then Joel, then Ven?
Yep.
Perfect. Oh, all right. Well, we're live. Well, good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone watching around the world. This is the panel that we are running on, focusing specifically on the challenges of the digital economy. My name is Okiki, and for a little bit of background, since I'll be helping moderate and somewhat lead the discussion. Currently work for KPMG at their blockchain center of excellence, focusing specifically on crypto assets, doing a little bit of client-facing work, also doing a lot to basically make it so that financial institutions around the world can integrate crypto assets within their kind of like legacy internal systems. But yeah, in terms of introductions, Aaron, would you be able to go next?
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Oren McMillan. I'm a product manager at Gnosis and just kind of, I guess, general kind of long-term Ethereum tinkerer. I got really actively involved in the Ethereum space back in 2016 around the DAO, and since kind of participating in that and its kind of meteoric rise and catastrophic fall, I've been just enamored by the entire kind of DAO concept. And have basically kind of stayed involved in various different capacities with the DAO ecosystem as it's kind of evolved and different frameworks have come and gone. Yeah, that's essentially me.
Nice, thanks, Joel.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Joel, co-founder of $3 Labs, and I've been in the Ethereum space, I guess, and kind of crypto in general since back in 15. Worked on a few projects. Uport was one of the ones. Since then, co-creator of $3, and right now we're focusing on building something called Ceramic Network, which is like a decentralized network for verifiable information in general.
Thanks, Ven.
Yeah, cool. Hi, I'm Ven. I am a designer by trade, mostly doing product design at DAO House, but also lots of designing communities these days. We're learning DAOs, we're learning how those work with people and with humans actually collaborating together in a DAO. So yeah, most of my work and thoughts are around like people working and just co-creating inside of decentralized communities, basically. Most of that work focused on DAO House and getting people to launch new DAOs and get those DAOs to work together and so on and so forth.
Awesome, welcome. And last but not least, we have Suji. Welcome, Suji. Would you be able to quickly introduce yourself?
Hey guys, sorry for late. So Suji, co-founder and CEO of Mass Network. We've been involved in the ecosystem since 2016, and the Mass Network start to build the mass network scene with the Ethereum around 2015. What we're doing is we cut the bridge between the Web 2.0 and the Web 3.0. The Web 3.0 is like the peer-to-peer network, blockchain, Ethereum, DeFi, NFT DAO, but it's not connected to the Web 2.0, like the platform of Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. Right, and you cannot buy a token on Twitter. You cannot send a stablecoin to a friend right on top of a social network. The mass network is the middleware trying to solve problem and the bridge or portal to the new open web. That's something we're trying to solve, and there's a lot of things really we see DAO and digital economy.
Cool.
Thanks for joining. So for the first question, Suji, did you want to take it or?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. So the first question, since we're focusing on challenges, when you first think of, I guess, the digital economy as it's changing and how, as the world has kind of been forced to recognize and deal with it, but also adapt and learn about it, like, what do you think comes to mind for you in terms of like the first barrier to either entry, adoption, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's exactly probably what you saw, right? And personally, my feeling is, and I was thinking of, we have to download an Ethereum wallet or any kind of wallet first to use the current, digital economy or decentralized finance or decentralized autonomy organization. It's not really working, right? And my feeling is, based on the history of the Netscape Navigator, the Microsoft Windows, right? And Netscape Navigator as the browser really changed a lot. And today, wallet is not that thing, right? We're trying to be something like the Netscape Navigator. Don't really ask user to say, hey, you have to use something that is designed for financial tools, for your digital identity management. Do not use your wallet for your DAO management, but just use your Twitter in a very, very innovative way, or still using some like a browser like middleware. That's something we think. Another problem I think a lot of people mentioned today is like the Ethereum jamming problem with the layer 1 and DEIP, 1559, and many other related things with the POS, right? And that's something I think we can discuss later. Personally, I don't really have a preference on these things, and I just think, my personal feeling is just, I don't think we should treat all these other, fork chain so harsh, because they're just solving the real problem. And there's lots of user we onboard from the Twitter, and then just directly go to the decentralized world, and the chain they're using right now is not Ethereum, but it's EVM compatible chain, and they're asking a lot of questions. And to be honest, right now we don't have an answer for them. Say, hey, why that looks all the same? You have a private key, then all of a sudden you lose all the access of the other asset, right? That's all these important questions. So I think it's more on the mindset. It has to be go out of the it's more geeky, and wizard community. Consider that, and say your user is grandma, and your grandma should never use your stock software like Robinhood to manage their like grandson's content. So that's my feeling. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. The adoption hurdles related to basically like Web 2.0 and kind of like bringing the entire world into Web 3, kind of I guess the growing pains become a lot more apparent, especially when people are kind of comfortable with Web 2. But yeah, Oren,
yeah,
Joel,
well, it's not enough, right?
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously a UX pain point that the entire industry has been dealing with or feeling for the entire time for a long while. It's slowly making some great steps towards improving. In some cases, kind of towards replicating a Web 2 feel. So projects or products like Fortmatic, Magic Link, Portus, Taurus, where you're kind of replicating a typical kind of Web 2 auth, and then creating a system where you can avoid having to kind of show users transactions to sign. Like you can kind of abstract a lot of that away. And then other systems like universal login, Unilogin, which is now discontinued. But I mean, like that, in my opinion, was a really interesting one, because if it had existed in an environment where gas was significantly cheaper or non-existent, I think it actually would have improved on the user experience that you typically get in Web 2. Essentially, the user experience of Unilogin was you show up, if you don't have an account, you create one, and essentially that device becomes the anchor to your account. And then you can add any other device by kind of linking them up. Under the hood, it was a Gnosis safe multi-sig. And so it's just like each device becomes a signer on this multi-sig, which I think was a really, really neat pattern. And one, again, that like extended on or kind of improved on the typical kind of Web 2 user experience of email address or username and password. unfortunately, the gas prices really made that just like not tenable. But I feel like there's a chance for that to kind of make a comeback, or something similar to that, something building on top of that to make a comeback in this kind of upcoming environment of kind of layer 2 proliferation.
I really like your point about, and I've heard it a couple other times too, about there are UX frictions for users to come from a Web 2 or from Web 2 and like passwords and whatever magic links from the email and whatever, and comparing that UX to like the UX of having like a crypto wallet, whatever it is, MetaMask or whatever. And there is like a point to be made that like once you do that switch though, it's a much better experience, I think is what you were saying, because like you can like cryptographically prove that this is me, and then I can carry this around with me everywhere I go instead of having to like have password manager software to like manage my usernames and passwords that can easily get hacked. Like
right.
That I now never ever have to like do anything with again, but it's always me and it's always authenticating me everywhere I go. And it's like actually such a better user experience once you do it, but the friction of going from 2 to 3 is hard. But I feel like 3 is actually way better, and we really just need to put 3 over 2. Like you should just be logging into Twitter with your Web3 account, for example, and then you can just do that everywhere instead of like having to have all these different.
Right. I mean, everyone here knows the experience of like showing up to a brand new dApp, and all of us, like, it's got my profile picture already there and already says oran.eth, because it's just grabbing all the stuff from my ENS domain.
And it knows it knows if I've interacted with it before, and maybe I have an airdrop sitting here.
Right.
Those types of things.
Yeah.
Not even possible in Web 2. So.
Yeah, I think that part is really related to Joe's like 3ID. And one thing I think I will leave to Joe later is like something we kind of completely miss out in this industry is the Mass Network is also sponsoring and collaborating with the Mastodon, the decentralized federated social network, with the infamous node ecod.gap.ai. But the Mastodon is a really cool project, and also there's a lot of third-party application of Twitter even today, and under the problematic policy of Twitter for a long time, and then Jack Dorsey came back, so they're still alive today with millions of users. And we actually donate to one of larger one, and then they decide to give us the whole repo and make us the manager. That's around 500,000 more user, even more user on a single project. And there's several other projects like that out there. They're not really crypto or super decentralized, but really important of the let's say social recovery contract. Through these third-party application of Twitter or like federated social network, you have already social contract, right? It's social graph of certain user, and you can gradually decentralize that with an existing solution of Ethereum, and then with the layer 2, you can say, hey, just ask 5 of my Twitter friends, and they can recover my Twitter key. And that Twitter friend list is not really from an API. You can grab that from WebView. You can just fetch the DOM, or there's many other way. That's something really missed out. I can't tell the numbers, but to be honest, compared to the sky high token price or the market cap of any token project, or these, very, very interesting, very cool project has a lot of users, they don't really have anyone backing them. So that's something I think people should really take a look in our industry, because it's a good timing. Because if you're talking a good hype, yeah.
So there was a few panels before us that kind of touched on this issue a little bit, and I think just to recap on some of the things that were said. So wallets and like the onboarding experience was like definitely one of them, and like the question of like I'm used to passwords and recovery, and maybe there's some kind of social recovery thing that we need to like finally figure out. And then there was also like this thing with like regulation. And sometimes regulation is like annoying and in the way because we can't get the stuff we need to do done. And sometimes it's actually like protecting the general person. And like how can we find a balance there? And I think another thing I've heard is like content curation, and how like we curate content in like the social media platforms today, and like what are the problems with that? And that's actually like stopping things, because we can't like as communities communicate as we need to. But I really like the direction you went in, Ven, with like what are actually the positive things, and like we shouldn't be focusing on like, oh, these are the hard things. We should be focusing on which are the problems that we can actually solve with this technology that we're building. And I think it's really interesting to like look at communities like the Wall Street Bets community and like that type of movement. And I'm sure there are like a bunch of other movements that are similar to that, and like they have a very network structure, but for completely different causes. So I think the question we should really be asking ourselves is like, how can we align the tech that we're building and the kind of the Web3 movement with these kind of network movements that probably exist under the surface everywhere?
Totally agree. I think, yeah, the number one thing that actually gets us to adoption is creating things that help create value for humans, right? And that like actually like, yeah, like that's the thing that we have to do. Like any UX frictions will work themselves out if there's enough value to be had on the other side of it. Humans will make that jump. But yeah, we have to like, we have to help people like use this stuff to do things that helps their lives and their communities, you know, and we can do that. Like there's so many different ways that it can be used for good. But, you know, yeah, sometimes the UX can get in the way, but regardless, like that's where we kind of like are focusing right now, is just like creating as much value for other people as possible and allowing them to create value for us and themselves and everybody around them, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And another thing to mention is the Gitcoin, right? They're doing brilliant jobs for the whole, I think not only whole Ethereum, but I think gradually all the blockchain related community and developers. But I want to mention that even now, the maintainer, the main maintainer, the main page of the F-Droid, it's the free Android store. It's the only that accept a donation Bitcoin. So that's a huge problem. People are still like stuck in the age of 2014. Yeah, Bitcoin is fine. I accept Bitcoin for donation. And then the mainstream Fox guys, they're really stay poor, and some of them are moving to Gitcoin. But I think sometimes we should move to them, just like what we did with the social network, right? And I think there's a lot of things we can do, because we do remember that we all remember a time that MetaMask had to basically try to let our like people sharing on Twitter to say, hey, Google, why do you ban us, or why do you do this to us, right? There's several times like that. Yeah, and the community power is not strong enough. But I think, you know, if it's a movement when your grandma will join, that's time it was success, right? Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I guess like, is it though? Like, because sure, like if we're building just a financial system for financial like usage and sending money around, like, yeah, then like that the goal of that should be to onboard everyone like at the same time, kind of. But if we're building something more that's more kind of like, I don't know, like I think we haven't really put the finger on like, what is this Web3 thing, and like what's the like, how will we actually use it? Like I think we don't know that yet. And really looking at kind of social movements that exist in the world today, and like how they organize, what they do, what causes do they care about, and like trying to learn from that, and like how can our technology actually help those types of use cases. And I think we as a community are doing like way too little and like looking at that and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, agreed. I totally feel like, I mean, there's lots of stuff to figure out on the tech side for sure, but most of that's just a long roadmap that we all know needs to be built. You know, like there definitely are some things that need to be figured out more, but we have a long way to go before we hit those points really on the dev side. And the problems are much more like social and knowledge based, I feel like, and coordination based, you know, just like, yeah, coordinating with Web2 communities and like in ways that help them, you know, use this stuff, not going over there and shilling Ethereum, buy Ethereum for this reason or whatever, but like, you guys should use this technology to like help your community like grow or whatever, you know, like those types of things would be cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point, really focusing on the individual technology and the value proposition that comes along with that technology. Taking that point and kind of weaving it into something that Joel said, or something that came to mind based on what Joel just said. Do you think that one of the challenges could be building without having enough people, quote unquote, onboarded versus having more? Just because, like, looking at a lot of the, design choices and considerations made for a lot of other like open source communities, a lot of it was involved with, a lot of it could just come, a lot of it came down to who was in the room at that time, who was in the GitHub thread to, say, hey, I think this is a concern. How are you all kind of thinking about that?
I mean, I think that's kind of the way that just about anything is built or designed initially. Like it's the people who kind of show up initially are the ones that have an influence on how things are shaped. And I don't think Web3 changes that at all. It's, there's plenty of DAOs of one or DAOs of two.
With the caveat being that the borders of that initial group are more open than in a Web2 startup or something. Typically, like the first people really create that initial value, but the borders are open for open contributions immediately, which is a
right. And so, I'd agree and I'd disagree with that because I don't think that's unique to Web3. Like I can do the same thing. I can start an organization with a Discord server with a group of people from all over the world, and then go and incorporate it in Delaware. So it's like Web3 doesn't really change that. I think what it does do is potentially make it in some situations make it easier for like people to trustlessly or kind of in a trust minimized way actually contribute funds into a collective pot and then choose how those funds are allocated early on. Like that kind of thing is where there's much lower friction. That's where I think Moloch DAO has really like that's its like core function in my opinion. Is like the rage quit function where you can have a bunch of people contribute money to a pot of funds, decide how they're going to spend it, and if they don't like what the collective group has decided, can leave with their share of those funds. That's a really, really powerful concept that doesn't exist as in such a low friction way in the Web2 space or in just like the traditional in traditional organizations. It's not that low friction to spin up an organization that is universally accessible, and it's not that low friction to then leave an organization with something.
Right. I want to hit back on I still think Web3 enables that much more than like understood. You could totally go and do that with the Discord. But yeah, when you have money involved, like you said, like if there is a DAO involved in that process, then those early contributors or whatever, and then that open membrane that is for open or contributors to come in and contribute, like they can request money from the DAO for their work permissionlessly, and there is no CEO who can be like, nah, we're not going to do that. Like literally just the people in that community, like if they think that's going to be a valuable contribution, they're going to get paid for it. Like that's not really possible with Web2. So at least
in that case, you're already talking about like the people in that community and the funds that they have and stuff. And like a lot of the early decision making happens before there's a community and before there's any funding. And so that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think Web3 actually helped in that case. Like you get to some critical mass before you go and spend a few $100s to actually deploy a DAO right now, because it's with the current gas prices, it's not cheap. And I think like the decision making, right? Our next day you can spin it up for a fraction of a cent, which is fantastic. But even then, like I think in most cases, there is still some critical mass that you reach. And a bunch of decisions that have been made prior to hitting that critical mass before you go and create something like a DAO and start putting funding into it. I think that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that there's a genuine advantage to Web3 prior to reaching that critical mass on an idea.
Yeah. One that mentioned, kind of best story in the last 48 hours. That's why I'm so tired today. If you don't mind, is we will do something in that 72 hours called initial Twitter offering. It's same thing as any I something L, right? It's just like way of public offering. But the way the reason we call it ITO is like because it's on Twitter. Use our middleware and just install MetaMask network plugin in. It's not like MetaMask, but somehow you see a tweet becomes something you can buy. Not really an NFT, but something you can buy a new token. So that's an initial Twitter offering. The thing is, we even talked to very high level people inside Twitter. Say, hey, if you want to ban us, don't ban us. And they say, oh, Jack is cool. They'll never try to ban you. I think, okay, everything's fine. Even Twitter guys have some oral things they didn't like us. And the problem we've had in that day is we nearly crashed the Infra or any other major ECM RPC node provider because we don't talk to them, and I think it's had a lot of traffic from Twitter, and then these people have something like a wallet, and then go to Infura and like pro quick node, and then I talked to all the other major providers, and they say, okay, probably you should use Aura of us. Then I even talked to the major miner in China because they don't really provide service to other people. They're just miners, but they're kind of okay. It's fine for us to have some traffic, and we have to delay for 24 hours. That tweet got 2,000 likes in 1 minute. Say we're gonna delay the initiative offering for 24 hours. Otherwise, we're gonna crash the node. And then people are really shitting on us. And in the next 24 hours, we successfully have 4 node providers, and then we realize they're relying on each other. So if you use Infura, they're gonna just somehow use the magic routing. Then one of the Chinese miner will become their backend, and then it's gonna be another kind of difficult problem. But somehow we managed to do the ITO, and then the gas fee just rise from 200 to 4,000 in 1 minute. That's another disaster. Kind of, we don't want to be a disaster for the Ethereum traffic, right? But that's how the other thing work. If you're really driving a lot of people from the internet to the Web3, right? Even from the largest kind of monopoly platform, you will figure out a way to talk to the internal high-level people. They will probably say okay on some really experimental thing, or they don't bother to kill you right now. Or you're really innovative, they can't carry you in an old-fashioned way. And the only problem is you're going to kill the current layer 1 or the current many infra. People miss out. Usually people don't really think the inferior is a problem. And the night I called them from MetaMask, and they're like, hey, congrats. Last time having some EOS on us, and then DeFi on that, so it's cool. Yeah, that thing is also another thing we should definitely take the consideration, right? Because most of people, when they are on board and then they figure out, they have to delay because they can crash something kind of node. They think, okay, you're centralized, right? And in all these things, all this problem we encounter about everyone requiring on another thing, and it's like no really clear structure inside the current Ethereum ecosystem is not a problem. Yeah, because decentralized is good, but in terms of which RPC is relying on another one is another level problem, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, that's totally a very, very salient point. It ends up showing how kind of early we are in that there are kind of like a lot of, I guess, different providers and different entities that when there is that sort of long tail event, you find out, oh wait, they're all putting each other's they're all leaning on one another. So then when one falls out, the house of cards comes out, which I think is because the network is so decentralized right now that it's more of an inconvenience as opposed to something that's like totally catastrophic, something that like shuts down the entire network. So it's good that to an extent that things like that do happen, so that way people are able to kind of moving forward recognize, hey, let me not put all my eggs in one basket. Maybe I can figure out a way to maybe even set up my own node for these sorts of long tail scenarios like this. Maybe instead of me just going straight for Infura, maybe I know somebody else who's kind of running their own node infrastructure. Maybe I'll give theirs a try, and just have them in my back pocket for precisely this scenario. So that way, when basically there's kind of like either congestion or something falls over, it's failing forward, and people already have the redundant nodes and RPC endpoints they can point at.
I think that should be I think this should be public knowledge that like say, hey, if you have a large Asian user and Infura is going to be crushed if you are doing a really successful launch related with the international traffic from the outside the user of the existing platform, right? Existing Ethereum user, and you should able to have a user a playbook from a lot of other projects. Say, hey, that's what we experienced, and okay, you have that thing to do and that thing to do, and don't be worried if you crash some like nodes of Infura. And today I didn't see anyone. It was there several times Ethereum and other people facing this problem. There's no existing playbook, but there's already existing playbook to buy a lot of Bitcoin. Right.
Yeah, totally.
So I guess we're like just discussed like two different things, or in my mind, there's two different things. Like one is like, how do we onboard like a bunch of people at the same time, which is like a transaction throughput problem. And the other one was more like, I think we discussed a little bit earlier, is like, how do we make the initial people that kind of kickstart something not have like influence like what the platform or what the network kind of the direction of that too much. And I find that like really interesting to think about, because if you think about like biological systems, you kind of have things grow, and like the structure that you start with, that structure will kind of stick. But if you only have like one cell that kind of just splits, like that's not going to become that much. But if you think about like a human being, you have some structure that's like encoded into the initial, starting off that like makes it come together and cohere in like some way. And I wonder, like, can we actually like construct these systems in a way which we can like, initially like pause and say like, okay, how can we gather input from like the people that we need input from in order to make the design of the system like right, and like not just like do something and then that like could become something and then it like doesn't structurally hold together. And I think that's like quite important that we can like be able to do that, because otherwise I think the Web3 ecosystem will not be able to like, function or take off.
I mean, leaning into your like example of biology there, there's more than likely like an evolutionary process that will go in, or has gone into kind of deciding which tools, which processes, which projects actually proliferate, actually last. And so it's like, it's not that the tools, processes, projects, or whatever that have and this is true for the Web2 space or the Web3 space or any other space, like the things that end up doing well are not the ones that necessarily were sat down and pre-planned perfectly. They're the ones that managed to evolve and adapt, and by the process of natural selection, best served their purposes. I think. Go ahead.
No, and I think like you Suji's example before of like trying to onboard like this huge amount of people. That's like, yeah, we can probably learn from that, like as the whole community, and then like, like maybe do that better the next time, and then like continue improving, and like maybe then at some point we can just like onboard everyone very rapidly into some new like crypto system.
Yeah, definitely. And we love to share the playbook with anyone, like have similar vision, right? And just like we also think that what if we can provide 100 million EMS for already to the user, right? That's really amazing vision. Even right now, we even just received around 2-3 million requests. Not really like DAU right now. It's gonna crash all these major middleware. So it's still lots to do. And there's many weak points we didn't even notice, right? Like some other RPCs relying on each other, and then it's jammed all these strength problems. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good points, everyone. Thank you. Another point that I think we lightly kind of grazed earlier in the discussion is around identity. And this once, I forgot who was mentioning it, but the first thing that came to mind was this Twitter thread where people were asked, or I think somebody was asking for people to post, their Ethereum address. And a lot of people, of course, commented, oh, that's poor OPSEC, ETH is account space versus, Bitcoin's UTXO. So I think that or I guess does the panel think that one of the challenges might be, while on one end we're able to kind of figure out robust identity, but on the other side, people might be similar to Web 2, they might be
Okay,
I think your sound cut out.
Oh, yeah.
No worries. We can roll with it. I think we probably have a good feel for where that question was going. From I guess from the OPSEC point of view, I agree and I disagree. If you're just dropping, obviously the transaction history for any address is public, and it's really important for users to understand that. But trying to kind of dictate how people use their addresses, I think, is the kind of wrong approach there. I have the way that I approach that is to have an address that is public, or several addresses that are public that I know to be public, and so I only do things on that I'm happy for people to see. I mean, that generally is the thing that I use 9 times out of 10, because it's for the vast majority of my interactions with Web3, I'm fine with people seeing it. But I have a set of addresses that are should be more private. We'll see how great my OPSEC is, but it's they should be more private. They shouldn't be associated. And so I think there's a user education issue there with trying to make sure that people understand that what they do is publicly visible. But trying to dictate that an address is this kind of account space, and it should be kept perfectly anonymous or perfectly pseudonymous, shouldn't be tied to your real world identity or anything like that, is I think is just naive.
Yeah, well, or at least, as you said, a personal choice. I mean, it's up to the users to do whatever. I do the same thing you do. Yeah, pretty much 9 out of 10. I don't care. I just default to transparency all the time because I know that there's more value in that typically. If I do something stupid, somebody can call me out on it, and then I can learn from that. Whereas if I'm being private or whatever, then I'm not. But there are good cases to do that. And if someone wants to go completely pseudonymous and be really careful, then that's absolutely their right. But yeah, super good point to educate new users that the default is 100% transparent. So make your choices, but you're free to do what you want.
Joel, I'd be really keen to hear your take on that, given the experience with 3box and Ceramic and IDX and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just completely agree with what you said. It's really the user's choice, and there's a lot of use cases where there's a huge amount of value to be able to see, this is my address and this is who I am on chain. The systems we are building, our identity, things where you can make a profile and whatever, that's completely pseudonymous. You can make whatever fake profile or fake as you want. And I think it's really important that we build systems that allow for pseudonymity, and then you can choose to go more and more towards being less pseudonymous, but use the ability. Imagine if Satoshi couldn't be pseudonymous when he launched Bitcoin. That's not that's just integral to Bitcoin being a thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of counterexamples to that. I don't think part of the Bitcoin meme, I guess, is obviously the anonymity of Satoshi. That's part of what makes the meme. But there's plenty of counterexamples of people launching blockchains that are publicly known. So I don't think it's a critical, or it's not necessarily a critical piece to the puzzle to make a blockchain that works or is adopted or anything like that or has value.
Yeah, for sure. But like the first one and the one that's like the most valuable, like I don't think Bitcoin would be where it was if Satoshi or everyone knew who Satoshi was.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely baked into the Bitcoin meme for sure. Like that's part of the allure of it.
Right. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think to kind of like synthesize those 2 points, it is definitely part of the meme, and I think that is used to successfully empower people within the community to say, yeah, okay, this person basically put what for most people, myself included, would be an infinite amount of money, left it on the table just to do a net positive thing for all of humanity. I guess to Joel's point, though, one could argue that because the government, at least in the U.S., there's the whole Gavin email thread where Gavin was saying, "I got to talk to the CIA," and then just like that, Satoshi vanished, right? So I think that there's something to be said about kind of both sides of that, where definitely people should kind of feel all right with having those transactional information forward, kind of known and transparent, and people as they're being onboarded, which it's really tricky right now because a lot of people end up being onboarded in order to buy something, right? So then they're not necessarily thinking about operation security. They're not going to sit through a 20-minute video that says, hey, when you're setting up a bank account to put your laminated recovery phrase, make sure to ask for this, right? Because maybe they don't have that. Maybe they just want to kind of buy in and quickly get out. But I think it's definitely something that as we continue to onboard more and more people, I just know someone is actively working on it. It's probably going to be an exchange, maybe even a ledger, or custodian, Argent, Rainbow, what have you. Suji, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the CIA joke is really funny because I remember reading Ty's earlier blog that he basically was, trying to talk with Gavin Wood, and then I think they're just trying to discuss some early algorithm of the ECM, and then they kind of forgot the details when they back to work, and they say, okay, we should ask NSA. They have all recording, and they're gonna figure out what bag we just found of this year. Probably the best is this right now on Steam. Yeah, so that's a funny story. And I'm right now in Shanghai, and also I was born in China, and it's the same thing here. I mean, it will be same thing in a lot of the country, no matter it feels more authoritarian or feels more okay. And the problem is most of people think, okay, I don't really trust the government agencies. And then when you talk to Bitcoin about the financial autonomy or decentralized federation about data autonomy, they're gonna say, oh, you guys are scam as well, or they just came in to make money, right? That's the contradiction here. And personally, I don't really like the tweets saying "aces money." I do like these of tweets sometimes that is fun, but if easy money, then why it's just gonna bring you freedom or whatever people are really want, right? Because I think most of the people don't really just want money. Yeah, they just have something more to ask. Yeah, but it's also very fun to see people trying to tell the Bitcoin maximalists, okay, no, we also money. Yeah.
Then did you have anything to add?
No, not on that point, I don't think.
Okay, no worries. Cool. One thing that really comes to mind when I'm thinking about challenges related to the digital economy is the, I guess, kind of but the relationship between the digital and the physical. And looking at, Zora, their first product iteration, it was tokens on a bonding curve that you could redeem for a physical item. And thinking about that and looking up just how weirdly enough, like the American postal system works and how like insanely complex that is, how like wild like StockX is and stuff like that. It makes me think like how tricky it is to kind of like blend the digital and the physical. But then, then you start thinking about NFTs, and then I start thinking about like digital property rights, things like that. How does the panel kind of like feel about or think about, NFTs, how people are thinking about digital property and kind of how people are valuing it, and what some of those barriers to, I guess, adoption are?
So NFTs are really interesting. I mean, like obviously the NFT space has blown up, absolutely exploded over the last couple of months, and it's one that like I personally don't get it, but that doesn't matter. Like the fact that I don't get it doesn't matter at all. And I have a former teammate who does some awesome illustrations, and I've been trying to convince him to get on and start minting NFTs with his illustrations. And just jumped on a phone call with him last night, and the first thing he asked was the exact same thing. He's like, "What is this? Why does it matter? Why do people care? Why would someone pay money to own a JPEG file?" kind of thing. And the point that we landed on was that, like, that's not unique to NFTs. That's the same for basically every kind of collectible. People who collect shoes, people who collect old Game Boys, people who collect Pokemon cards. It's like, if you are not in that space, if you're not in that community, you go, why would you pay hundreds of dollars for this little piece of cardboard with a Pokemon on it? Why would you pay hundreds of dollars for some secondhand pair of shoes? But it's like, for the people in that space that understand it, that get it, that have kind of gone into it, those things hold a tremendous amount of value. And so it's like, again, the fact that I don't necessarily get it doesn't matter. There's a huge community of people who do, who buy into it, who love to collect it. And it's a really cool movement to watch play out as an insider or as an outsider.
So I think it's interesting that you kind of started this conversation with talking about the interface between the physical and the digital, because NFTs right now, they're only like digital. There's digital art, and like the way I see that is kind of, it's mainly just art used to like get the thing, like what an NFT is into minds of people. Like we make art to explain things, right? And then once we have that kind of bridge ready, and it's like super tricky. I know there are multiple companies like working on like, how do we actually bridge the legal system into this crypto system where I can like send an NFT and then actually transfers ownership. I think the really mind-blowing thing for me is like when we started like tracking all resources, and like we have a public ledger that we can look at, and like imagine you like you go to a page where you see like a globe and you see live how like resources flow around the earth. And then I think we will probably really kind of go straight into governance and like, shit, all resources are congested over here and we have 0 resources over here. That's fucked. Let's do something about it. And then like decentralized governance is going to be extremely important. But I think yeah, it's really, NFTs are really going to show like the mismanagement of the earth resources and like the misplacement of it.
I really like that you said that you don't get it, but you or whatever, you're not like a huge fan of NFTs. But I know that you get it, but whatever, maybe you're not a huge fan. But that's a really good point. It's relative, right? Value is relative in general. Reputation is relative. Value is relative. All these things are relative to like each other in communities. And if a community values anything, I mean, I don't know. There's many other reasons about NFTs though that I again or kind of go back to that point of like, is it enabled by Web3 or is that just a side effect kind of thing? I feel like from earlier maybe, because maybe you could do it without Web3. But one of the things that I like about NFTs is that it's peer-to-peer. So like when I buy the NFT, I'm buying it off the artist. I'm not buying it from the gallery who's like taking 80%. When I buy a music NFT, I'm like, paying that music. So it's a much tighter connection to the, as a fan, or whatever. Like I know that I'm supporting them as as much as I possibly can, basically, because it's peer-to-peer, and there's no middleman there to extract value in between. In some cases, but I mean,
in some cases, yeah.
I
mean, I definitely think there are some unique things that NFTs enable that kind of were not possible, or at least aren't possible in the same way in a Web 2 environment. I mean, that you hinted at there is like essentially just the trustless nature of this, that like anyone can go and create this thing, anyone else can go and participate in the system that's been created, without having to go through some kind of permissioned system. You know, you're not having to necessarily interact with some marketplace that's taking a cut, although the vast majority of them do, because there's a synergistic relationship between the marketplace and the artist. But those kind of things are like opt-in. You're choosing to interact in that way. NFTs, I think, again, are an interesting one because they're born on Web3. You know, like that's something that, I mean, you could have tried to create something similar, but if you know, I mean, I'm not aware of a project that's selling minted JPEG files via PayPal. You know, like that kind of thing doesn't exist because like it's uniquely enabled by this idea of like a trustless ledger, like where you can actually have this entry that is, you know, this is the unique version of this on this ledger, and you can't take it away from me unless you can revert the ledger. You know.
Right. Exactly.
Joel, to your point of or I guess Joel, to the point of like tying the physical and the digital. There's a really cool thing, Comcash, where you have this kind of smart contract locked in a tiny little chip. And I think this is a really neat way of kind of achieving that, like the idea of like tying a physical object to an NFT, to a kind of digital representation. I've talked with a lot of projects about other kind of ways to enable this, or actually, I mean, using this in some other kind of creative ways. But I would love to see that kind of thing start to take kind of more traction. One pattern in particular that I've talked with a lot of people about and haven't seen anyone implement yet is I'd love to see something like this, where essentially whoever has access to the chip, or whoever gets close to it, can essentially send it to their wallet. Like this thing, you can send the NFT to your wallet, but like whoever has access to that at whatever time can send the NFT to their wallet. And so you could kind of create this interesting like chain of provenance where you could basically just see who has actually been in physical contact with this. You don't ever, if you walk away from it and then someone else walks up to the physical item, then they get to put it in their wallet, kind of thing. And so you see the NFT jump between wallets, even if the physical item never moves. Something like that, I think, would be a really interesting system to engineer and then to see how it actually plays out in the real world.
For sure, yeah. So it looks like we're bumping up against time. I want to thank all of the panelists for joining. But yeah, I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. It was a ton of fun, guys.
Yeah.
See ya.